glorious day, y'all. Another glorious day, indeed. I hope everything good with you and yours. You know, life is amazing, man. You know, life is amazing. You heard? I'm gonna wait until y'all, get a few of y'all up in the building, man. You know, but yeah, life is amazing. You know what I'm saying? Despite, you know, how cold the world can be. I mean, that's just the reality. But life itself is amazing, and people make it uh, more. People, in a sense, really create, you know, horrific, circumstances. You know what I'm saying? You know that make life more harder, stressful. You know, that's my take on life. Humans by way of destructive behaviors and all of that. But besides travesties and the things that man brings about, besides a natural disaster or, being in danger of wildlife, you know what I'm saying? Because we were definitely at point before things evolved and what we're used to and how we live now and everything that the world consists of, with so much that goes on. Um, Life is amazing. But I wanted to just, I wanted to just share. And my point is though, right, when I say life is amazing, because it will definitely be challenged with that type of mindset would be challenged with how corrupt and how um, effed up the world is. But despite, again, what it is that man creates that really brings about the destruction, especially with, like I said, wildlife, whether it's humanity, the ocean, and things that really take a big hit from man in regard to chemicals and, so many different ways in which what we create could wreak havoc on nature, right? So besides that, and wars, and again, let's subtract all that of what man contributes to the destruction of life or the world. Life is amazing. But I'm not here to talk about how effed up the world is. But besides that, in our own individual worlds, of the things that we do have control over, the things that we have say so over, the choices that we can make to either improve or make things worse for ourselves is what I really want to get at. But I wanted to really just use, again, my own choices as an example of, like, if you could see in the title, if you saw in the title, smoking and drinking. This is just one aspect of what making the necessary changes and choices to whether improve one's life or to make things worse, right? So smoking and drinking for me, and this is not a video for me to, I'm not I'm not here, or I'm not making a point to bash or and go on a rant about people should not smoke and drink. You know what I'm saying? I can care less. But what I'm saying is this though, is that it really has increased my enthusiasm about life. You know what I'm saying? So if you want to know what I'm talking about, just listen. You heard? You're gonna learn something. You know, you're gonna learn something. So what I'm talking about is, since you asked, I'm talking about the beauty of arriving to a space within and to appreciate life. That's what I'm talking about. So since you are in this chat, this is the information that you're gonna receive, is the appreciation for life, okay? The beautiful world that we live in. Again, despite the things that make it not so beautiful. And the very important thing and the point that I'm making, I just wanted to check in real quick with this information, with this way that my thoughts were really focused on this morning with my own appreciation for life, is that I wanted to share. You see what I'm saying? I wanted to share with you all a positive dialogue of how of the beauty of life. And you may need to hear this. So many may need to hear this, because we do live in a world, a society where we are so bombarded, you know what I'm saying, with the very things that will make life very unpleasant. But what I'm getting at also is that what goes on within us in terms of how we think, our perception, what we went through, how we cope, and things of that nature will either increase our appreciation for life, or we will remain in a state of feeling that of what people go through every day. You know what I'm saying? With feeling hopeless, depression, right? And again, I'm not here to go on the whole, topic of, I just want to really just share with you all how what I thought at one time gave me the joys of life in terms of the smoking and the drinking, but I appreciate that I took that road at one time, because it's just a phenomenal feeling of appreciating and valuing life without those things to have me rely on enjoying life with those things. You feel what I'm saying? And it increased my appreciation for life. And the reason why it did, because when living with vices, right, with an addiction, and again, this is not like a recovery video, no, because I'm not in recovery. I'm just simply mentioning the very things, whether it's smoking or drinking, whatever it is that one has went through in life, and that in which you went through has really you know, had an impact to where you were able to get back in a space of being a stronger individual, gained more wisdom, had a broader gained a broader perspective, and have become more Teflon in dealing with situations and circumstances that still arise in one's life. You know what I'm saying? Because it's always going to be something. But one thing for sure is that what we already have endured, we also could deal with things in a much better way while going through the motions of life, and still have a very high appreciation for life. And that's what I'm talking about. Um, and it's just I just felt like sharing that. I'm not gonna be on here as long as I was yesterday, but I just wanted to share that real quick. And you know, so yeah, not having those vices of smoking and drinking, for me personally, is just a phenomenal feeling. And it's not just a feeling, just to have that desire so much to life to fulfill our purpose and needs of stimulation, you know, of and that purpose is to be busy, you know, to have something to look forward to make a contribution, to see an outcome, you know, to assist others. You know, that I mean, it's so much that I'm able to appreciate more so than I ever have had in my life. You know, and fitness is one of the biggest factors. You know, it's one way to get joy out of life, and not have to, and it could only be beneficial. You know what I'm saying? It could only be it is only it's only beneficial, you know. But yeah, I wanted to just share, because when we wake up each and every day, and without being bogged down with having to you know, debate with oneself whether I should you know, spend money for this substance, or to make a more healthy investment, meaning, you know, should I buy groceries or should I get this eighth? You know, I mean, so I'm just saying, it's so when we talking about the very things that just constantly have one in the state of a tug of war, if you will, to where, and don't get me wrong, some people got the means to do what it is that they enjoy doing with recreational activities. So, but not just with the financial aspect. I don't. That's one factor with what it is to have an addiction, right? Because whether you have the financial means, an addiction is still an addiction, and that addiction could be a tug of war where you're going back and forth with oneself with even just showing up at your child's basketball game, or because you may want to go to the bar. You know, people deal with that. So it's really about, again, a struggle within. But I just wanted to, like I said, I want to just talk about the freedoms of not having something, a substance, hold us back from the greater enjoyments of life. But like I said, I myself am just so appreciative of life due to whether it was smoking or drinking or just being in the mindset of a way of life that was only, you know what I'm saying, leading me down the wrong path. You know what I mean? And so that is a everyday freedom of to be able, again, to give the necessary focus to the things that just offer us more enjoyment and the beauties of life. You know what I'm saying? And it's not just the controlled substances, and you know, that's one form of self-imprisonment. But even with negative thinking perspective, overeating, again, I want to also just get at too, like, back to the shadow work is so important, that working on oneself, again, with the things that we battle within, the influences that are on the outside of us with society, it, it's so important, and it's a beautiful feeling when having our own perspective, the freedom of making a choice and not second guessing what others think, right? So, and life is so beautiful when we have that level of autonomy for our own good, and not allowing the things that attempt to interfere with how we want to experience life. And even with the things that people look down on, right? If Because everybody copes with life in a different way, right? So it's so many ways in which we choose to take the, so many ways that we take what's going on in our world and to uh, sort out how it is that we're able to navigate through what it is that we can gain from and what we need to get rid of, if you know what I mean. And that's a daily task in itself that will allow us to get right to what it is we're focused on, with goals, with being able to reach our dreams, our aspirations, and things of that nature. And but to be able to do it with a clear mind, a clear perspective, it it's also very challenging, especially depending on age. Um, right, when you're young, you're more um, influenced by your peers to to a large degree. Even adults, life, even adults too, deal with peer pressure, right? So it's not just about the controlled substances and stuff. It's really about standing strong on the square. Is what I'm getting at too. It's just a very great place to be when you're sure about yourself, right? And that's what I'm getting at too. So it's not solely about, again, a drinking and smoking type of thing, but these are two main, whether it's smoking, anything that is relied on to cope with life, that I'm saying that is what most battle with, or it gets the best of most, and robs people of the the qualities that help us navigate through life, and to again get back to these, navigate through life, and to be able to get the great experiences that the world is filled with, again, despite the distractions of the harsh realities at the same time. And so that's what I'm getting at too, right? And it's just a beautiful feeling, again, when you sure of yourself, when you standing on your square, and when you're able to rely on great judgment, right? We're gonna make mistakes. Nobody's perfect. But one thing for sure is that even in those times of not feeling your strongest, you are at your strongest when you're able to make that choice of what's gonna go in your favor, what's or what may feel uncomfortable, and still have the strength to make a certain decision, knowing it's the right thing to do, whatever that may be, and be able to live with yourself also, right? So I want to make mention of that. That's a very strong quality too, is to be able to live with yourself, right? So I'm going to go back and forth with the point made of, again, this is not necessarily about smoking and drinking per se, but I'm just using that as for me personally, as for so many, has held me back from my full potential in terms of suppressing, as I said yet on yesterday's live. I just wanted to sort of touch back on that, from suppressing what it was that life, what makes life so amazing, you know, and that is the becoming a better you, and the experiences in terms of achievements, gaining more independence, um, networking, purpose, again, purpose, um, being excited about new experiences, right? Because when, and I'm saying this for me, when I was in a world of just kick back, relax, catch a contact, right? That type of day-to-day living, the desire to pick up a book and read wasn't there, right? Um, the very things that would have taken me much further early on in my life was at a stagnation. My perspective was stunted, right? Again, so the very things that allow us to grow are stagnated by way of the things that we feel, or that temporary escape. And it's just a constant being robbed of what many people lose sight of, what's giving us the fulfillment that has, that requires work to be able to, you know, tap into, you know. And whether it's smoking or drinking, we will be tested, because we need to be able to experience what it is that is best for, us, by way of what is the opposite of what is the opposite of a more enjoyable experience. Meaning, again, the yin and yang of life, right? It's not, it, in order for us to learn, there has to be those challenges, to where one has to put in the effort, the work to, and it goes back to self, in order to learn there needs to be opposing forces that gives us that appreciation of the appreciation of what it is we're made of. What I mean is, if everything was all good, it would be, without, there would be no fight. If there was no so-called negative and positive, if there was nothing to measure what it is we go through, is what I'm saying. We need an experience to compare with our daily experiences within life, right? So it's necessary for the struggles, the challenges, and then the enjoyment, the pain, and the pain free. And that's what that's what I'm getting at too. It's just a necessary vibe of life, in the sense of the survival aspect is needed. Okay? To know what pain is like, and then to know what to be pain free is, that relief, that in a sense is purpose too. You know what I'm saying? Like that in a sense is the purpose too. So that's why I used the drinking and smoking, because I was in a constant state of being irritable, having an attitude, things of that nature, right? But then when I started working out, when I got back to a place where, sort of like, I had something to compare to. All right, I'm in a state of where I don't like the way I'm feeling, but I feel better when I'm under the influence of this thing, right? But then I'm in a tug of war, right? Because that vice is, on one hand, I'm feeling good when I'm indulging, but then once that high is coming down, my mood is compromised now. My focus is non-existent to the things that could keep me on a level of a high frequency, right? And then I'm still able to compare, right? Going back to comparing, wow, when I'm not under the influence, and when my mind is clear, and when I feel better, because now my focus, and I have more of what I need in order to be more involved with the things that I can only remain in the space of being in a more elevated energy, and more in control of what just makes my life easier to deal with on a daily basis while standing firm on my square. And what I mean by standing firm on my square, I'm present in the moment. And what I mean, and that's another thing too, what I mean by I'm present in the moment, whether I'm at work, if I'm just focused on any task, I'm not dealing with the weight of something outside of me in terms of what I'm relying on to make me feel good. And that is taken away from the very thing that is just going to improve my life. And that's what I mean by standing firm on my square. You know, to be in the moment and not be present physically and then mentally I'm not aligned with where I'm at in the moment. And that is what I also mean about standing firm on my square, like I said, but again, not having to be in two places, not having to be in two different places, again, meaning I'm physically in one place and then mentally in another place because I'm dealing with something that I'm relying on to to help, not help, but to give me that illusion of fulfillment, right? So, like I said, I need something to compare. So whether it's drinking or smoking, whether it's being around the wrong people, whether it's negative thinking, these, what I mean by compare, right? And again, why it's so necessary for life to have the opposite forces that we deal with. It's the challenge of recentering one's way and how we again deal with this way of life. What's up? What's going on? Miss Diva, what's happening? So you know, I mean, yeah, so it's the yin and yang of life, but within that yin and yang of life is recentering oneself and getting and constantly growing into a space of where we are, or as an individual, I'm where I need to be in a strong mental space and to naturally be able to experience life with the hardships, with the enjoyments, right? We need something to compare within our own experience. You know, that's the point that I'm making with that. Comparing how I thought yesterday, last week, to how I think now, today. You know, thank you for the super chat, Miss Diva. Appreciate you. Much gratitude. You know, so it again, smoking and drinking has really increased my appreciation for life. And let me just, cause I'm gonna be honest with you, and it's obvious, I wanted to hit on different points of because again, not everybody has an addiction with weed, or I mean with smoking and drinking, right? That was just one of my vices. That was two of my vices. But I again, it goes back to, let me get on track here, y'all. And I appreciate y'all, with the patience of, my delivery. And when I get on the live, it's not scripted, and I need to sort out how I want to make sense of making these points and what it is that's taking place on the inside of me. So not everybody has an addiction. Not everybody is smoking and drinking. It's very, again, it's, you have the overeating, you um have people that are promiscuous. It's so many different vices, right? That hold us back, you know, from our greatest selves. It's, because not everybody is smoking and drinking, and that's, or have a controlled substance problem. It's upbringing. It's again, the people that are negative influences in your life. Some people are abused, some people, so whatever that is that has shaped and molded one's perspective of the world. It's so much that what is what is of the worst experiences of life could increase our appreciation. And before I get off this live, and like I said, I'm not gonna be here that long, but let me just get straight to this point. Let me get my mind right in what I'm saying here, right? Because I need to really drive home what I want when I want to make the point of, right? Is that despite the challenges of life, right? Whatever that journey, whatever your path has been, I'm just here to let the people know, to let you know that we could always arrive in the space back to where we can enjoy this beautiful thing called life. And we see it every single day with the transformation with people that have gone through the worst of the worst and have taken the necessary steps and fought for the for themselves to get back in a greater position of where they want to be, to overcome, outgrow, move past, excel, the very things that we deal with as human beings. And with the challenges of life, again, brings about the purpose, the fight, that, and again, it's so, and that's why life is arranged in such a way to challenge us, to get up and move, to get up and do, to get up and make a difference. And so, being that I myself is big on, you know, the shadow work, and, you know, being a witness of not just myself, but other people, and that also increases my appreciation for life, you know, to where you can see somebody that was at their worst, or, and then make that transformation and be the total opposite of what they once were. So and again, the constant evolving to better, to, is what I'm so grateful for, you know, and I appreciate the very things that hindered me, and that is where I'm able to look back and say, wow, what a moment, what a time, what a place that I'm no longer at. And it is so, it's a great experience on a daily basis. And the reason and what makes it so great is the constant growth of, through the daily challenges of, again, being still amongst a world to where even with my change for the better, I still appreciate even the negativity around me to this day, right? And the reason why I appreciate the negativity to this day, because I understand that with my conscious decisions of what I need for my own life is a reminder of where I no longer want to ever be, in terms of that mindset that only imprisoned me at a time in my life. You see what I'm saying? And and not just a reminder of those times of you know, being in such a negative space, but more so it's very empowering each day, of course, dealing with the world and being able to just deal with things better, and how I respond, and how I can counter the very things that will still attempt to impede on my progress. And that's something that we all deal with daily with our fellow human beings that we occupy the same environments with every day. But I just again appreciate life so much, with again the very things that I appreciate life so much more so now, more due to the times in which life wasn't so enjoyable, and it's an everyday increase of enthusiasm. Because, and what I also mean by this is that when I wake up every day, it's a opportunity to grow, to learn, to experience different, and that's all I'm saying. I really, and it's a beautiful feeling to and it's a blessing every day to have that opportunity, you know what I'm saying? And also because, with so much that I have yet to experience, even at my age that I'm at now. And that's a beautiful feeling too. Excuse me. People, it's easy to get burnt out. And that's also what I want to say too, right? It's easy to get burnt out. And that burnt out is losing your enthusiasm for life, feeling that age is limiting you from doing, what it is that you have not done yet, or you neglected, or you want to get back to. So I'm just really here to say this morning, I see them likes going up too. I appreciate you. Much gratitude. Shout out to the chat. I appreciate you, Miss Diva, for that super chat. So grateful. But again, I'm just really here today to say I don't want to make this complicated, man. But I just really want to say, life is beautiful, and I just want to share that energy with those that come across this chat again, because we do live in a world that's very, very it's very tough. It's a very tough world to live in. But one thing for sure I know is that, when we surround ourselves with people, it's just so many different outlets that we're able to, increase our joy, or to get back to that place where we want to be our, highest self within our energy, you know, um, change our circumstances, experience the new. It's all here for us. You know what I'm saying? So stay focused. You know, every day, every moment the time that we're blessed to be present, you know what I'm saying, that, you know, we could take advantage of that, you know, show that love, you know what I'm saying, to the people in your life that got your best interests at heart, you know, um, all of that, you know, is very fulfilling, you know, at least for me it is, you know, especially now. And and I wanna also make mention too is it's very necessary for these type of conversations. It's a very great way to get our spirits just in a very high frequency. You know what I'm saying? It's very important, just as much as we're prone to speak negative. You know, to speak positive is so important to water our spirit, and that's what I'm saying. You know, we have to water our spirit. We have the responsibility to invest in a healthy state of mind, a healthy perspective. You know what I'm saying? It's what allows us to blossom each and every day. You know, and that's a very necessary day-to-day need for us to be at our best, even when we feel other than our 100% self. You know what I'm saying? So I just wanted to share that this morning. Like, you know, that's all. But I just used the whole smoking and drinking as, again, a point in my life. I'm going back to that. That's what I titled the video as. So I want to just make that comparison to what I was dealing with at a time that I appreciate so much now, and who I was able to arrive back at currently. You know what I'm saying? And that's the thing I want to also say too, with that being said, is that, you know, before the world, you know, has an impact on who we are, who we're becoming, who we're, you know, a lot of our past is what has an effect on so many up into their current, to this current day. And we can undo the very things that kept us from excelling and try to permanently, you know, keep us down and out. You know, again, whatever that may have been, it don't have to be the smoking and drinking. Whatever it was that we all, some way, somehow, had to overcome, the beauty of life still is very, 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 very much a real way that is so available to us who know it to be. So, and that knowing it to be is, it always existed, the beauty of life. It's just that we have, we, we, one way or another have to be able to arrive to that appreciation, to that being grateful for the beauty and the greatness of life. You see what I'm saying? So, and that's why we're challenged with the very things that make life purposeful, you know, and increases that drive. You know, the resistance is a good thing, is what I'm saying. The resistance of life is a good thing. You know what I mean? You know, because what is, without the challenges of life, how do we measure what we're made of? And that's what I'm getting at also, you know? So I'm just really trying to just give different ways and how it could be looked at and help keep the proper perspective, and that's a main way in which we shape our reality. Is perspective. It's to be able to have a outlook for the better, even when things may seem one way. You know, and that's the beauty of having a broad perspective, to not be stuck in one way of thinking. You know, to have a broad perspective, and that's another powerful way that we're able to cope and keep ourselves in a space to where we're able to be optimistic. You know what I'm saying? To understand that the challenges or so-called hardships or what have you is not permanent. Things are temporary, but we need the resistance of life. We need to be challenged, and that can either make an individual or break an individual, you know? And to just look at life in a whole and to see how life goes on. And I want to also say this, and with that being said, with everything that's going on in the world, you know, being bombarded on social media with the very things that could put a damper on your day, just take a look, sit, you know, and again, just observe the world around you and just appreciate and look how life goes on. And that's what I'm also getting at too, at least how I see it. I'm looking at my surrounding community. You know, when I'm on, I appreciate humanity. That appreciation is at an all-time high for me. I don't know what's going to happen an hour from now, tomorrow, but one thing I know for sure, it's my responsibility to keep on the forefront the optimism of life. And that's why I'm talking about how I appreciate what it is I've gone through. And a lot of what I've gone through was choices that I made, conscious decisions. You see what I'm saying? So I want to share this as well, right? You know, because it's not about the world just attacking me. I'm never a victim, right? I don't take on the victim mentality. And that's what I want to make a point of too. Is that a lot of what I've been challenged with, a lot of what I've went through in life, you know what I'm saying? A lot of that was conscious decisions that I've made. So when I was in the streets, or, when I was just into whatever it was I was into, a lot of what I dealt with consequence-wise, you know what I'm saying? Like, I asked for that. You feel what I'm saying? Like, I brought that into existence, and that's where that's where the accountability aspect come into play too. So that's what I want to make mention of. That's why, again, I feel so good to be in the space that I'm at now, because I'm so grateful that I recognize the very things that you know what I'm saying? I recognize the very things that I know I brought upon myself, and that's another freedom. You know what I'm saying? Is the accountability aspect of life. So I just don't want to make it like, you know, um, pardon me, y'all. I'm just getting this right. My battery getting low. I know I said I wasn't gonna be on here this long, but I just couldn't. I just can't just close out without really making sense of why I came on this live, and not to just be like, I don't. I want to be able to just, get certain examples. Um, I just want to give certain examples of what it is that, this is why I came on this live. Anyway, so a lot of what, again, I've been challenged with was an intentional decision that I made, and learning from that is again also why I feel the way I feel today. You know what I'm saying? And in terms of, just being in a better space, you know what I mean? So it's not, again, like I said, this is not just about the world attacking and this, that, and the third. You know what I mean? We all making conscious decisions each and every single day, and I wanted to give examples of what that also entails with the day-to-day way of how our realities are lived out, you know. So I wanted to speak on that too, and that, again, besides the controlled smoking and drinking aspect, you know what I'm saying, it's just that initial, because we all gotta, we have a different side, but before we even indulge in those things that only, make life more harder, you know what I'm saying? We all have a side. We know ourselves for the most part. Most people know ourselves. And so again, that shadow work, that, you know, the understanding and my own way of thinking, and to really be able to identify with my own thoughts, my own mindset. It's just, I'm so appreciative that I have the power within to help me, you know, really have more control over my life. You know what I'm saying? So, and so again, that's why smoking and drinking has really increased my appreciation for life. It so it was a suppression of everything that I give all the necessary attention to now, that I may have not as much as I should have in the past. And I probably would have matured much earlier on. So it's more than just a positive attitude per se, or it's more than just, it's so many, it's so many different ways of appreciating life. So many different ways of appreciating life. And that's that's the fuel. Just like when you put gas in your car, you need that fuel to go forward. So that appreciation is the fuel for me, because the lack of appreciation for me was a negative energy that weighed very heavy on a daily basis within. One thing for sure is that that weight has lightened up a great deal. There are days that naturally the residue of the past will stir up a bit. I identify it, I check it, I get it under control, I change my thinking, and I'm going back to the power within. And that's what I appreciate so much about the time of when that power wasn't so strong, but the purpose within me was developed by way of wanting to become a better individual. And it's been a journey up until this day with the shadow work. And that's the great amount of appreciation that constantly grows. Constantly grateful. Constantly in a state of adding on and subtracting what it is that makes me a better individual. What I mean by adding on is taking on the things that contribute to my growth and subtracting the things that are no good for me. And it's all about the thought process. You know what I'm saying? It's about the thought process and the power of staying the course on the straight and narrow. You feel me? So like I said, you know, whatever that, those vices, whatever it is that was the very things that attempted to hold you back, to make life seem to be more of a hassle, unfulfilled way of existing. It is necessary in order for us to appreciate being able to get back to what the beauty of life has to offer us. You see what I'm saying? You know, so that's just how I see it, you know. So the challenges and the resistance of life and all that really brings about purpose. You know, people, the resistance is to measure what we're made of, to measure what you're made of. And just to be present, you know what I'm saying? Like right now, the here and now, to be present. You know what I'm saying? So I don't really, you know, get caught up in so much of what society projects about how negative or how cold life is and all that, that, just wants to have a negative impact on us all, and what I mean. But I don't get caught up in that. Again, I sit back and I observe, and I'm not gonna be blinded from what's so great amongst us each and every day. I don't care if you live in the hood or whatever, you can see the beauty in it. You know what I'm saying? You're gonna still see life going on. You're gonna smile. But I also want to say too is that I want to say this too is that I want mine. I with the very things I have yet to experience, that's what makes life so enthusiastic too, and increases my enthusiasm too. And that's why I appreciate you know what it was that stagnated me at one time. And that's why when it comes to age, you know, uh, that shouldn't be a limitation placed upon oneself, because every single waking day we have the opportunity to experience the new, to get a different experience. You know what I'm saying? And I don't want to lose sight of that. And that's what I'm getting at too, y'all. I don't think I really was make. I mean, but yeah. So, and that's my take on it. Every day is just an opportunity, and I want to be more grateful. I choose to be more grateful for those opportunities. You know what I'm saying? To what it is that the unknown. It's very exciting, and if I was just dealing with the vices of an addiction, a negative attitude, you know, um, anger, bitterness, and all of that. I'm just saying. Besides the smoking and the drink, I want to, what I mean. It's just it's that type of energy that stagnates so many before we even have an addiction and all that. Because you don't have to have an addiction to be a person filled with pessimism. I just used the smoking and the drinking and stuff just because that was just one of a major stronghold for me. But one thing for sure, I always had that desire and that fight to and that love for life. I never lost that. That's one thing for sure, and that's the best way I could put it. I never lost that love for life, man. I like hearing people laugh, smile, and all that. I mean, for real. Again, it's a confirmation on a daily basis that life is beautiful, man. Even when you're going through your own situations, challenges, and stuff like that. You know what? I mean, come on now. How many of us been through the worst of the worst, man? You still was able to laugh at one point or another. You know what I'm saying? That right there is just a reassuring, a confirmation that things get better. You alive. And that's another thing too I want to say, right? Is that, you know, pain is not a bad thing. And what I mean is that we need to be able to feel. You know what I'm saying? I got a conscience. You know, I'm connected to my emotions. You know what I'm saying? And what I mean connected to my emotions, if I'm feeling happy, if I'm feeling sad, if I'm feeling whatever it is I'm feeling, I'm alive. So that's what I wanted to really get on here and also talk about too, really is that, you know, that appreciation of being alive, you know, and that's a beautiful thing. You know what I mean? So that resistance of life is that's why it's so necessary, because you could feel every waking day. You have the ability to, you know, to feel what it is that you are here to experience the beauty of existing. You know what I mean? So yeah, I wanted to say that too though, you know what I mean? Is that with the clear mind, so much to offer us, more than we more than what we ever imagined. You know what I mean? So it's just a wonderful, wonderful way to wonderful way to have the mindset of viewing the world, you know? For real, for real. So yeah, that's what I wanted to talk about today. Just that appreciation that really grew from those dark moments in one's life, and to get back into the light. You know what I'm saying? That's also what I'm also talking about. But it ain't just about smoking and drinking and all that. Like, you know, it's attitude, it's personality, it's the attitude of life. You know, it's the attitude, and everybody built different. You know, everybody built different. Everybody's different. Everybody, you know, got their own opinion, way of life, and you know, it is what it is to me. In the terms of, you know, that I can't control that, but what I do. So, and that's another thing as well, is that the people that we don't have good energy with, we can appreciate those that we do have good energy with. You know, so the things that are the very things that are not to our liking can increase what it is that we do favor. And that could be people as well. You know, the very people that you don't care for per se. And when I say don't care for, you know, the very people that aren't, that are negative, increases my appreciation for the people that are positive. So the people with the negative energy is the increases the appreciation for the people that are positive, you know, who give me great energy. And that's also another thing too, you know, that's why we need to be able to compare. You know, that's why there's a such thing as a breath of fresh air, right? If somebody's holding your breath, if you're being suffocated, right? That's trauma, that's torture, right? It's a struggle, you know, that's a fight. But when when that suffocation is released, you could breathe again. And that's the same thing, that analogy applies to life, you know, to be in an environment, to be suffocated with the very things or the very people that are negative. You can get you can get a breath of fresh air with those that are genuine, with those that got your best interests at heart. You know what I'm saying? So there's always there's always mathematics, the mathematics of life, meaning with whether good or bad, the so-called good or bad, the so-called negative and positive, they they're always gonna coexist together. And we have to decipher which one is which. And it comes in many different forms. And a smile could seem positive, but that smile could be hiding what is negative. A frown could appear as negative and really be the opposite of what that frown looks like. And it could be one of the greatest forms of energy. So, you know, so many ways that we are able to life is very intricate in how things are presented to us. You know, what may seem one way, but it's the opposite of what we're perceiving it to be. You know, so and that's where we have a clear mind. That's where the purpose of having a clear mind allows us to have a stronger discernment with dealing with life, and our perspective is much healthier in how we cope. And that will get us through each and every day within the more higher frequency of life. You know what I'm saying? So And that's all I really got to say today. I kind of was going around in circles, and and it's just as simple as that. You know what I'm saying? It's very complicated life, but at the same time very simple. So and it's all perspective, and it's but life is very much worth it if you see it to be that way. Not everybody is on the same frequency of life, but I'm gonna choose to, if I could help it, continuously, you know, do what I need in order to increase more of a positive experience by way of my mindset, because we had a choice to make, and it's no escaping that. Each and every day, each and every waking day, you know, we got a choice to make. Yeah, so, but I appreciate, I really appreciate what I sort of, not sort of, but I just really appreciate the journey to what led up to the individual I am thus far. You know, so yeah, that I got it. That's enough, man. Like I said, I wasn't gonna be on here long. I was on here longer than I was just wanting to, share that though. You know, my appreciation increased a great deal from the so-called negative that increased my positive. You know what I'm saying? And that's really what it is. That the negative increased my positive. You know, and negative ain't necessarily a bad thing, because you need to detect it. You need to embrace it, and we could transform it. We could transform it. You bet we can. I do it every day. You know, I do it every day. And I tell you one thing though for sure, when I'm talking about anything outside of you, chances are, in terms of finding an escape from oneself, it's not going to help to deal with life in a better way. You know what I'm saying? So it it, it it's everything within, and I choose to identify with the I choose to identify with the makeup of who I am, you know? I choose to identify with what I am able to control with me and know that the accountability, and not just the accountability, but what I'm able to work on within, I am just able to better deal with what is in my surroundings. You know what I'm saying? And that's what knowledge itself is based on. I control me, and the world around me has less of an effect negatively on me. And so that's what not escaping with what I'm going through, what I'm experiencing within, going through the motions. And what I mean by identifying what's either triggering me, what it is that is on the outside of me that is having an impact within. And then I identify with what that I am encountering, and then I harness my own power in the way I react, in the way I make the conscious decision of or processing of, and then how I choose to process everything taking place around me, and then identify with what that, whether it's a trigger, whether it's a pleasant experience, whatever, and then I I shape my world from within. It's not easy, but to master the self-control is a very big deal in how the reality outside of us takes form. Yeah, I appreciate you. Yo, K-Ron, I appreciate you. Word up. Scrolling through, I double tap the thumbs up. Keep grinding, man. I appreciate you. And I'm glad you said that. Even getting on this live and, none of what I say is scripted. I mean, of course not. I just organically, I just share what it is that I want to, just get across and what is on my mind within the current time, you know. I so what depending on the different subjects that I choose to bring up, it's really based on really what I'm thinking in the moment, and that's where my mind was this morning when I woke up, was how my appreciation for life has just really grown from the very things that were taken away from my appreciation of life. And I also want to make this point too, right? Is when I was young, or any of us, right? When you think about it, when you were a child, before anything had an influence on your life, when you're a child, you're happy, you're laughing, you're smiling, you're joking, you're charismatic, you're expressing yourself, you're not second guessing, you know you your energy is at its highest when you're a child. And what I'm saying is that as life goes on, as we do become challenged, as we do encounter some of the harsh realities of life, it starts to dim that enthusiasm. I want to make that point of this too, right? Is that throughout our journey of life, we have went through whatever we experienced that took a toll on that happiness. And happiness, we have to, speaking of happiness, that's also applies to this topic at hand, is that again we could always get back into space if we choose to. We could always get back into a space where our enthusiasm of life is at an all-time high. We can get back to a space of feeling fulfilled, you know, and it's a lot of it is choice too. We especially with us being adults, but throughout, depending on what it is that we went through in life, man, or what we're going through, I'm I just wanted to remind us all, as well as myself, that we are able to make a 180-degree turnaround for the greater good of what the beauties of life has to offer. And it's our experiences that kind of, or may have dulled our life. That doesn't mean that life isn't great. And I'm saying this to say too, and it's our responsibility to get back on track. The world, life keeps moving, life goes on. And if I can help it, like I said, excuse me, I want to get mine. Listen, you could be down in the dumps, man, and people gonna keep it moving, and so I don't wanna I mean, we have to live with ourselves, and I don't wanna have to live with the pressure within me and what I'm dealing with, getting the best of me on a daily basis due to bitterness, um, feeling a vendetta, um, feeling betrayal, all these different things we experience also rob us from the beauties of life that remain, because even though we went through such times in our life, that doesn't take away the fact that life is beautiful, you know and it, so it's easier said than done. I get that. You know what I mean? It's definitely easier said than done in terms of us doing the work, and it's very uh it's very complicated. This subject is complicated in the way of, because everybody mind is so different. Everybody has a different way in what their purpose, that's if they have a purpose at all. But one thing for sure is that, and this is what applies to us all, we have a choice, we have a conscious decision each and every day to shape and form our reality, and we could deliver ourselves. I mean, and it may take time, but one thing for sure, we are more powerful than we realize. And even feeling at your weakest, you are really at your strongest. And I know that sounds contradictory, but it's true. Because it takes strength to show up when you don't feel your best. When you feel inadequate, if you felt unappreciated, if you felt neglected, betrayed, again, these very things that make it so difficult to see life in its beauty. But one thing for sure, that strength to show up, to still go about your daily responsibilities of what you have to do to survive. If one is able to recognize that strength, even with those very things that makes you feel weak, you can compound that strength simply off the fact that it's a very strong makeup of who you are to rise up and to still show up. If anything else. And I know that's not going to probably make sense to just the simple fact of showing up, but that it takes strength. So let me give you an example real quick, right? There's so many little kids that go to school, right, that get teased, like, that's one thing for sure. Let me use myself as an example. One of the strongest qualities about me, and this is before the internet. No, I know we hear about these, these quotes and things of that nature, right? But it's a real thing because, it does apply to real life. But anyway, let me use myself as an example, right? One thing that I knew was the strongest quality about what strength is based on, to me, was the showing up aspect. You know how many embarrassing moments, how many situations that I just totally wanted to avoid, right? With the pressures of being bullied, right? Whatever the case may be. But the showing up aspect, and I'm gonna say this though, I'm gonna give my moms the credit, right? Not to go into detail of, but I grew up in a household, in a single parent household, and out of everything that we went through, one thing I knew was to show up. And it was one of my strongest ways to deal with life. And what I mean by the showing up is that it confirms to oneself that you have what it takes to get through another day. Meaning, you could have had an embarrassing moment, and I use school, right, because those are the times where being criticized and everything is just at a very transparent, very blunt, direct offense, whether physically or mentally, right? Like, on that type of time. But the strength of, that sun is in the way, but the strength of showing up is still a huge amount of courage. Knowing that, and you don't have a choice, but some people do is avoid. You have a lot of people that dropped out of school or never showed back up, who just off the for the sake of avoiding the harsh realities of criticism, of being being ostracized. You know what I'm saying? And this is what I'm talking about too. So it's not just about the controlled substances or smoking and drinking and stuff. We deal with life in ways of which attempt to defeat us permanently. You know what I'm saying? But to be able to show back up, you be like, you know what? I'm going to go regardless. And that's what I mean by even when you feel at your weakest, meaning when I say you're weakest, not in the bad way, not in the, like, what I mean you're weak is like, if you don't feel as but you still show up, if you don't allow, because what I mean by a feeling of weakness, that's also a mindset that we have to fight past, right? Because our mind plays tricks on us. We can lie to ourselves without intentionally lying to ourselves, meaning the negative thoughts, you ain't no good, you don't have what it takes, these things we have to fight past. But the showing up aspect is not just the physical, but it's making the conscious decision to, I'm gonna do it anyway. That, you know what, to remind yourself that I'm better today than I was yesterday. Or not remind us, or to confirm to yourself. But the showing up aspect is a big deal. Before you actually show up in the physical, you still have to make the mental, the conscious decision to follow up with you being able to show up past the doubters, the naysayers. You see what I'm saying? The forces that that oppose any form of your progress, your importance. And that's why when we live in a world that's some of the most challenging realities we're faced with. It's within the social aspects of society. The judgment, the prejudice, the criticisms, you know what I'm saying? But to be able to show up, to be able to fight past your own doubts, you know what I'm saying? That's where we recognize the power within. So I wanted to say that too. And that's why I said I appreciate, not just with the smoking and drinking, I just use that as I'm saying that to say, to overcome the hurdles within, the roadblocks within, and to get to a space. And I want to, before I close out, to say I did that. To truly feel, to truly be the person you worked on to become to that true change, to be able to identify with in the moment of being or yeah, to be in the moment of handling a situation much better than you did in the past, and to identify with, wow, you know what I'm saying, I handled that well. You know, again, it starts with us being able to take control. We could take back our power, is what I'm saying. And, and, and so I needed to stay on this live, and out of everything that I was saying and trying to make sense of, because to a degree, for me, this is not so easy either, to get on this platform, this device, and talking to whoever. I don't know who is actually watching me right now, but I'm gonna show up regardless, even with me being my own critic of my delivery. And I'm just being honest with you, right? I'm gonna keep it 100. You know, sometimes it takes time for me to really get the ball rolling and get in my groove of, you know, making certain points, and to, you know, to smooth out, you know, what it is I want to get through to the audience. You know what I mean? But I'm gonna show up regardless. And this is the confidence. This is me accepting me needing to improve while still doing what my heart desires. You know what I'm saying? So I just want to, I want to also make mention of that too, right here now in real life. You know, because I know and understand, like, you know, I'm gonna be honest with you. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm quite sure whoever there might have been individuals that came across this live and heard me at certain points when I was talking, like, damn, what are you talking about? He don't, whatever the case, whatever that thought may be. But I cannot and I will not allow what I can't, what I have no control over, in terms of who will resonate, appreciate, and genuinely want to take the time out and, you know, be a part of what I'm bringing forth to this arena. You know what I'm saying? But that is what I want to say also, to still be able to show up for yourself, you know, and that's how we get closer and closer and closer to the to the transformation, to that final outcome and beyond of what we see for ourselves, to improve what our journey consists of with our individual experience of life. You know what I'm saying? But to get past our mental our mental weight, our our own obstacles within that are also placed upon us from the world, and then our own dealing with who we are, figuring out, learning about who we are. And that's also another way we're challenged, besides the outside forces, when we're trying to figure ourselves out. That what makes it more of a challenge while figuring ourselves out, it it's a journey of being able to